landscape photography world, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. This time I'm talking to Kieran Stone about his work and motivations, along with a range of other topics I hope you'll find interesting. Kieran's photography career started when he moved to London a while back and started to document his travels around Europe. On his return to Melbourne as a biomedical scientist, he started to get more serious about progressing his photography and spent a lot of time working on his brand, skills and promoting his work via social media. If he could sum up his life in one word, it would be curiosity. Ever since he was a child, he's been interested in the world around him and the universe as a whole. Wondering at the millions of years that went into creating coastlines or mountains was much more appealing to him than the ever-changing focus of media and entertainment. This wonder and curiosity, combined with a wanderlust to see all that he could, has brought with it an inevitable desire to capture the world through photography. The more places he visits, the more cultures he came to understand, drove his passion to create images that portrayed the splendour and raw emotion that they evoked. Kieran's photography is an expression of his thoughts and philosophies. It's a description and physical representation of his life as a passage through time and development as a human. He endeavours to never stop learning, whether it's in photography, science, his own personality, or existence as a whole. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Kieran. Welcome to the podcast. How are you going?
I'm fantastic, Grant. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Very pleased to have you on the show. Been following you for some time and was talking to Danny Watson a little while ago, and she definitely suggested catching up with you and getting you on the show. So very pleased when you said yes. So thank you very much for agreeing to be a part of this weird little radio show that I'm running for myself.
Yeah, definitely happy to be here. And as you know, I'm a fan of your work as well, and I like your stuff. And yeah, I can definitely vouch for Danny as well. I had to listen to her interview, and I'm very sorry, Danny, for putting you to sleep with my Photoshop teachings. But yeah, I do remember that session as well, and how some of the people came away from what I was trying to show. And yeah, Danny's definitely surpassed that session and moved on to become a fantastic photographer in her own right. So that's really great to see her progression.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So what's the Kieran Stone story? Where did you start, and what got you saying, oh, photography's for me?
I guess I never really sort of started as a photographer. It was never something I grew up with wanting to be a photographer. For me, it was all science and space and astronomy and all that kind of stuff. But I also spent a lot of time traveling, and whether it was just locally around Victoria and around Melbourne, or eventually traveling around the world as well. And one thing that I always had around was a camera of some kind, and I just like taking photos, whether it was friends at parties when I was a teenager, or heading out on road trips and taking photos, or music festivals. It was just something that was always a part of me, and I didn't really think about it too much. But I guess the wanting to take it on professionally came from moving over to London for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, I'm going to be over there traveling around Europe quite a lot for the entire time that I'm there. I want to be able to get a decent camera and at least an upgrade from a point and shoot camera that I had been using, just something that would fit in my pocket. And I thought I'll get a digital SLR and try and learn how to use it. And so I can go out and actually take half decent travel shots and document my time over there as best I could.
Nice.
And then the more I started doing that, the more photos I was taking. I was really enjoying it, and I got a lot of good feedback from friends and family, and even entered in a couple of little competitions. I got a couple of photos published in magazines just from winning those competitions, and then getting uh, a prize of like little weekend trips away. So that kind of encouraged me to take it even further from there.
Very cool. So what was it, I guess, I mean, obviously that got you started along the lines of full time. What made you say this is definitely a career that I want to follow?
I think it was when I came back to Melbourne and uh, had to either find a job in what I was doing at the time, which was biomedical science, or try and build up a name for myself or a career in photography. And I wasn't happy with the photos I was taking at that time in terms of being a professional photographer. So I still ended up getting a job as a biomedical scientist, and then spent the next three or so years building up a name for myself on Instagram, and spending hours and hours just engaging on Instagram and building up a following there.
Yeah.
And maybe getting a few photos that went, I guess, a bit viral for the amount of followers that I had. And I just spent a lot of time after work hours just working on my photography name, my brand, my skills, learning as much as I could, either from going out and shooting, reading books, watching YouTube, and just developing my own style up to the point where I was happy with where I could go from there. So I didn't think it was the best I could be, but it was definitely at a point where I could start selling my work. I could start teaching other people. And if I worked at it, I could do it for a living.
Yeah.
And with my wife still working, we were kind of financially stable enough to take the plunge in 2016. And I quit my biomedical science job and just started full-time photography. I started running workshops, advertising that on Instagram, on my website, and selling prints as well. And kind of just went from there, and it just continued to build throughout 2016.
How hard was it to make that decision, I guess, to actually cut the cord with the steady income and the day-to-day? I don't know if it was a 9 to 5 job or whatever the hours were, but you would have had set hours that you had to be there. How hard was it to cut those ties when it came time to make the call?
I guess it had been a long time coming. It had been something that I'd been working to for a while. So it wasn't that hard to make the decision. It wasn't a spur of the moment thing where I just decided one night, that's it, I'm quitting. I'm just going to go and give in my notice and start as a photographer. It was, a long time in the making. So it wasn't that hard of a decision. It was.
So you had a kind of a plan in mind when you made the decision, yeah?
Yes, definitely. I had I'd worked out what I was going to do for workshops. Even kind of went out and did some test workshops. They would just be one-on-one. Later on, I'd end up doing group ones, but I was able to work out what I wanted to do and how I was going to approach it. So I had the whole plan in place before actually taking that plunge. So it was still a difficult decision because it was going to be such a change, but it wasn't as hard as just doing it out of the blue.
So you mentioned, sort of building your style. How would you describe your style?
If I kind of look at my images as a collection or as a whole and try and work out what's a common theme, I guess I am attracted to bright and vibrant colors. and I guess seemingly simple compositions as well. There tends to be one main element that draws the eye, that kind of sets the whole scene, and then there's just the more details that the viewer can explore within the image, as they after sort of seeing it as a whole. That's usually eye catching from the colors and the composition, and then yeah, there's more to explore in there after that.
Cool. And you talked a little bit about personal brand. How important is that building of the personal brand? And I guess what kind of steps were you taking to build it?
It's important to build a personal brand just so you can stand out a bit more and be more recognizable. There are so many great photographers out there, and some of them they don't even consider themselves professional. They consider themselves amateur photographers, but they're producing just amazing work.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to stand out, you do need to have your own brand, your own sort of signature approach to your work, whether that comes out in how you engage with the community as a whole, or a very particular style that you present with your photos. So it's something that does come with time. I guess you focus in on it, you hone your own personal brand and name, and it gets to a point where it could shift around a bit, but it still sort of sticks to a common theme.
Mm.
And I think that it is something that you should work on, and kind of separate from yourself as well, because even though you are a person, you are an artist, you're not exactly a company by yourself, but you still become a presence or a personality in your own right. And yeah, there's some things that you would do as a brand, and I guess other things that you wouldn't do as a person, or I don't, there's just sort of some sort of separation between the two. And I guess it helps when you do receive any critique or feedback on your work. You can kind of separate it from yourself as well. And that's just sort of something to do with your product or your brand, and not yourself personally. And that's something that's also important when it comes to producing and selling art.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I guess particularly in that amateur space, probably don't recognise that need to separate the work from or the art from the artist, and any criticism or critique that they get, tends to be taken quite personally in some circumstances. And I think this is one of the I don't want to say evils per se, but one of the challenges with social media at the moment, where people's mental health can actually be impacted by what people say or do online. And that ability to separate yourself from your product, I think is a really interesting and really important point that a lot of people, particularly in the amateur space, certainly don't or may not really relate to.
Yeah, because it takes just the one negative comment. You could have 100 positive comments, but that one negative comment, it just sticks to you, and it's hard to shake off if you're really invested in the work you're producing and how it is taken by in social media, and whether it's accepted or not. And even sometimes the lack of any response is taken negatively. And it's difficult, and it is something you need to work on to separate it from a personal thing. And it's sometimes things are out of your control, and that includes just people either wanting to do the right thing or wanting to be helpful by providing some feedback when it may not be welcome, or just people who may just be at a bad time in their life and they just want to lash out and say something bad about your work. It's you just let it slide off your back and continue forward, and just focus on the positive.
I think I guess what I'd like to explore a little bit with you, if you don't mind, is, do you have any particular techniques you use to keep things on an even keel? I mean, I don't know if you cop much criticism for your work. I mean, I certainly wouldn't say anything untoward about it, but I know that there are people, and I know that there are certainly certain people out there, or certain artists out there, that do cop criticism, because maybe they've created a composite, and the more traditional types don't appreciate the attention grabbing that the composites might get, because they are, or might look a little bit more spectacular than some of the less processed images that are around. Do you? I guess what are the things that you do to keep yourself, from feeling bad when faced with criticism?
I guess one thing that the biggest critique that I got when I was sharing work was, and it's kind of a common theme with a lot of photographers, is people saying, it's photoshopped, it looks fake. And especially with my bright scenes, or just things that they may very well be composites, or they may very well be fairly photoshopped. I decided to think of it as a positive, and think, well, yes, it is photoshopped, and that's part of what I do. And it's I tried to turn those negative criticisms into a positive, and say, well, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It is part of what I do. And if there's any criticisms that just don't make sense, if it's just someone being mean for the sake of it, which I can't think of any examples. I haven't really had to deal with any of that. Being quite lucky in that regard. But I guess just trying to see it, the fact that you are a person and they are a person, and no one's really out to get you. They're just kind of looking out for themselves. So if they're lashing out at you, it means that there's something going on with them. And that's their way of coping with it. So it's nothing personal. They're not out to destroy you in any way. There's no real villains in the world. It's just people looking out for themselves. And if you just happen to brush by them at a bad time in their life, or if they're just unable to cope with certain things, and it's nothing personal, and you just kind of let it slide. Or either if it's someone that you know, then maybe reach out to them and see if they need help themselves. But if it's to do with the actual work itself, then I guess if it's real criticism, or real something that I can take on board, then I'll be happy to take it on board. But otherwise, just try and turn it into a positive, or see it as it's not really a criticism after all. It's just part of what you do. And
I guess, talking about things like composites and, Photoshop, and I mean, I've had the question, the always difficult question, has that been Photoshopped? Well, yes, it was a raw file, so therefore I couldn't do anything but process it, and the tool that I use happens to be Photoshop. I could have done it in GIMP, but, aside from that, though, there's, I guess, that decision point between rendering a scene exactly how you saw it versus moving towards an artistic, I guess, interpretation of what you saw, or how you saw it, or what you would have liked to have seen, had conditions been more in your favour. I guess where do you stand in terms of that sort of photography? I mean, I have an opinion, and basically it's largely um, if it's art, it's art, and the components, as long as you have the rights to use all of the components that you used, well, all power to you if you've got the skills and capability to do it. But other people I know have different opinions around that, and they try to get exactly the scene rendered as they saw it in camera as much as possible and do very little Photoshop. Where do you stand on that spectrum?
Well, I tend to approach with my photos to, I guess, try and bring out the emotion or the sense of place that I had there at the time. Um, so it's very hard to capture emotion in a photo that you just take when you're standing at a beach or at a mountain. Sometimes the location does it all for you, and that's fantastic. It could be just a completely beautiful scene with a beautiful sunset, sunrise, night sky, anything. Sometimes it just doesn't come out in the raw file, and with a two-dimensional image, it's, I guess, an example I tend to use because it does come up a lot is when you see a beautiful sunset and you take a photo on your phone, and then you're trying to show someone else on your phone later, and you're trying to describe it and say, "Oh, it was so nice. It was the clouds were really bright. It just went on for ages," and
Yep.
you kind of find yourself saying, "Oh, you just had to be there."
Yeah.
And so I try and bring out the moment that I was there, or bring out how that place impacts people, makes them feel, or just leaves you with that sense of awe-inspired moment of actually being there from just looking at a two-dimensional image.
Yep.
And it's not easy to do, and I'm sure I don't get all the way there.
Yeah, I don't think everyone nails it all the time.
Yeah. But I'm not opposed to doing composites or changing things around, making things a bit bigger or smaller, or getting rid of distracting elements, or putting in a new sky, or a Milky Way, or turning day to night. I tend to think as well of if someone was there and painting a picture, and they looked at a mountain and thought, I'll bring that forward a bit. I'll paint it a bit bigger. Those clouds aren't quite colorful enough. I'll paint them with some brighter colors. And then they show the painting to someone. No one tends to look at a painting and think, it looks fake. The mountain doesn't look that big, or the clouds weren't like that. But when it comes to photography, everyone expects it to be real, expects it to be exactly documented perfectly.
Yeah.
And I think that is the case with.
Sorry, that's the difference between journalistic photography and I guess artistic photography, and I'm not saying that journalistic can't be artistic, and vice versa, but I think artistic photography that's designed to convey an emotion that is there is certainly a different sort of genre to that journalistic. I mean, if you saw a photo, and there's been plenty of examples of it, but photo in a newspaper that showed something, you'd expect that to have actually been there when the photographer was standing there taking the photo.
Yeah, and I guess that comes back to personal brand as well. If you've branded yourself as someone who takes wildlife shots of animals in their native environment, their natural environment, and captures their natural behavior, and then you post or you put out a photo of an animal that's in a zoo and say that it's like, people will expect that to be photo that's taken in the wild. And so it might be misrepresenting animals in that way. unless you specifically say this is something that was taken in a zoo, or this wasn't a wild animal. It comes down to what people expect from you as a personal, as you've built with your brand. So if you're taking a whole bunch of photos that aren't really photoshopped, and you've worked really hard to actually go out and capture a scene exactly how it is, then if you just put out a composite without disclosing that it is, then people might find that of almost like a betrayal of trust, because they've trusted you to take non-photoshopped or non-worked photos.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it comes back to what the viewer would expect of you as an artist as well.
Yeah. So what motivates you creatively?
Ooh, I guess that changes from time to time. Creatively, I guess I just want to improve and grow as an artist or as a photographer. I try and say artist now more than photographer, because I guess lately I've shifted to some either digital art or just been working on photos a bit differently. But I guess just to find something new, create something new, just try lots of different things and find what works. I don't want to become stagnant and just keep producing the same thing. I want to keep creating and find something new to see, whether that's something that I've created on a computer or gone out to capture. I want to show something new to the world.
Yeah, cool. So when was the last time that you got out and shot? I mean, obviously the last couple of years with COVID, and I know you've got young children, etc. It can't always be easy to find time to get out and
about. 2 years.
Wow,
it's been a while. Since I've actually been able to get out, it has, and shoot properly. It has been a couple of years, and as I said, I've been working a lot. Doing either digital work or going back through the many photos that I've got, and finding things that I may have missed or I could work or put different photos together.
Yep.
So, and also definitely with being a full-time dad as well, looking after the kids all day, there's sort of no break from that. And then with travel restrictions as well, I haven't. Yeah, we had like in Melbourne a 5-kilometer limit that we could go to, and being in the middle of the suburbs, there's not much variety that you can go out and shoot as a landscape photographer. There was no beaches, no waterfalls. It was just streets and stuff. And there was I'm committed to spending that time with my kids as well, and making sure they have this important time with their father or with their parents. I wouldn't want to just hand them off to either family or childcare if I don't have to. I want to be there for them, and have them have a good upbringing in their first 5 or so years of life before they go off to school, and then it becomes a little less out of my a little more out of my control. So
sure. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'd assume that time, that couple of years in the pandemic and lockdowns, particularly in Melbourne, probably played a big part in that. Has that changed your attitude towards photography, and in particular travelling to take photos?
I don't think it's changed. I don't think it's really changed me that much in my approach to taking photos. I guess with the pandemic and everything, and also the kids, they kind of came along at an ideal time for me, because I was going to kind of pause things anyway.
Yep.
So I guess it has just had a pause in that time of going out and taking photos, but I have still been able to work on things at home. But who knows, when I head out, I might see things a bit differently. I might realize that I can do more. And so I'll approach the taking of photos a bit differently. But yeah, I'm hoping to head out again soon and get that all started again, since the restrictions have been lifting a bit more. And yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's it's really interesting. I haven't spoken to anyone who's other than sort of imposed lockdowns that has had such a long pause in really getting out and shooting. And I mean, what did I have? I think I had 165 days or something where I couldn't go more than 5 kilometres, and it's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation now. I started the podcast for mental health reasons, to stop me going nuts not being able to go out and shoot in that time. But yeah, I guess 2 years, has that been tough, trying to or not being able to get out and do what you're passionate about, or have you just found other ways to spend your time? Obviously, the kids have played a big part in that as well for you. But have you found that difficult in that couple of years?
There have been times where I've wanted to go out and maybe get a break and go out and take photos, get down the coast for a couple of days and just spend time by myself and with my craft. But it hasn't really been too much of a problem. I kind of feel bad for saying it, because I know how badly affected some people have been and how much of a struggle it has been for people to be restricted and stuck at home. But I did have something else to focus on, and I found other ways, I guess, to be creative. I kind of went out and learned a lot of Adobe Illustrator and started creating my own scenes, and still worked on putting out just digital art and creating work for stock photography and stock imagery.
Yep.
Which has done all right over the past couple of years. So I had other creative outlets in terms of being able to be creative. And that's the thing, the restrictions were out of my control. So it wasn't something that I let myself worry about. I wasn't able to dictate when the restrictions would end. Wasn't able to do anything about it. So I just, found out what I could do and moved on.
Yeah, very, very healthy approach to it, I think. I guess that begs the question. So is there a plan for the first location? What is it? Or is that a secret? You're not going to tell me?
There's not so much a plan. I've never really been good at planning things too much in advance. It's more of a, if I get a chance for a weekend, I might either flip a coin, or I've got so many places that I could go to take photos. So, I wouldn't mind getting down to Wilson's Prom. It's one of my favorite places in the world.
Yep.
So getting down there and taking photos as sand dunes, as beaches, forests. There's so much to shoot down there. So there's that. There's Mornington Peninsula. There's the Great Ocean Road. Lots of Great Australian or Great Victorian or Australian coastlines to shoot, waterfalls. So lots of options. I just have to decide on one and just go out and do it.
Fair enough. Any idea about the timing, or are you just going to play it by ear as well?
Probably play it by ear as well. I'll probably get out and do it soon and try and get back into that. I might be starting up some workshops again this year. So I need to go out and make sure I still know where the on button is on my camera. But yeah, I just need to make the effort and do it and plan stuff around with the family and head out and take photos. And I can take the kids with me as well, but having them stand around for 2 hours in the one spot while I'm watching the sunset around coastal cliffs or something, it's probably not the best for a 1 and a 3-year-old to be running around.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll have to work out something, but I'm a fairly laid back kind of person, so I'm not stressing about it too much. I know when the time comes, it'll arrive and I'll do what I can.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess that, you mentioned, finding the on button, it's not just the on button, it's all the technical bits and bobs. I guess in that time, do you, I mean, you're not going to forget the basics of, the exposure triangle and all those sorts of things, but I guess, are there things that you think you're going to find that you're a little bit rusty on, or is it simply because you haven't done them, or do you think you're just going to, it's a bit like riding a bike, you'll get on and away you go?
I think it'd be a bit like riding a bike, but I guess the process or the routine that you find that you end up going through when you get out somewhere is, and even if it comes down to packing the camera bag or when you set up
remembering everything, batteries.
Batteries, cleaning filters.
Shoot for your tripod. That was my one a little while ago. Went out for a shoot, dawn, drove an hour to the beach, got the tripod out, got the camera out. No shoe between the tripod and the camera.
I think I've done that once before. It's
it was on another body.
There's always so many of those little mistakes that you just make, and you either have to deal with or try and work around. I think I've forgotten my remote trigger before, because the last shoot I had was in a jacket pocket, and I hung that jacket up and wore a different one, and then I was looking around for the remote, and I was like, I had it like last week in the other jacket, and go home, and of course the remote's there, but trying to do long exposures and just try and either hold down the button or
it's not
press the exposure, the shutter button on the camera, and potentially shake it around. So you just kind of got to deal with the mistakes that you make.
There's not much you can do about them once you're on site, and the gear you want's at home, is there?
Mm-hmm. I'm sure I will make mistakes, but I'm happy to go out and spend hours or even a weekend taking photos and just spend that weekend making those mistakes, and then come away with nothing that I'd actually put out into the world. It happens. I've been on trips before where I've gone away for a little while and come back and said, I can't use any of these images. I'm not happy with any of them. They're not, can't always get the right conditions or anything. So,
Well, my last shoot was a little bit like that, except I managed to remember to bring everything I needed and everything set up. It wasn't a spectacular sunrise, but it wasn't a bad one. I got probably about 12 frames exposed, and there was a wave that hit a rock near where I was standing, got some backsplash. I got wet, the camera got wet, and then the camera decided the back screen wasn't going to work anymore. So it's been in the shop, and I actually got a message from them today saying it's ready to pick up. So I've been without it for a couple of weeks, and it's frustrating when that happens, because you sort of get part way through the shoot and light's looking nice, as I say, nothing spectacular, but nice, something you could work with, and you end up with a dead back screen, which means then that you can't really operate the camera properly because you can't see what's going on.
So, there's nothing worse than just a part of your camera just stops working. And
what settings am I using? I can't tell you.
I've been at a shooting waves that were crashing on rocks. I was like 10 meters high. There was where I was standing was dry, and I was shooting for about an hour. And then I thought, oh, I'll get like one or two more shots, just as a rogue wave just came and just drenched me. Like it was almost like having someone just standing there and throwing a bucket on me in the camera, and the camera just kind of switched off. And I was like, oh no. And yeah, just threw a towel over it. It's another thing I've always remembered, to bring a towel whenever I'm shooting at the beach. Got it back to the car, put the car heater on, and luckily by the morning it was still working. But yeah, there's some.
I stuck mine in a bag of rice because it wouldn't turn itself off. That was
all right.
So you'd switch the on button to off, and it would stay on. So the only way to turn it off was to take the battery out. So stuffed it in a bag of rice for overnight, and then it would turn on and off properly, but the back screen still wouldn't work. So I couldn't tell what it was thinking. So off to the shop it went, and anyway, I'm getting it back tomorrow to
get out and do it all over again.
Yeah, well, for me it's a tool, and there is an expectation, particularly when seascaping, that if not my gear, and I do try not to get it wet, but there are times when it can't really be avoided, and you do get a bit of spray, unfortunately. But it's when a wave just comes along and flops, and backwash hits you, and as you say, it's like someone's chucked a bucket of water over you. But
it is a tool, but an expensive tool. You can't just head down to Bunnings or something and pick up a new one.
To be honest, though, I was partly wishing that it was dead completely and I could go and buy a new mirrorless one.
There is always that kind of, you don't want it to happen, but
no,
that's an excuse for a new camera is always welcome.
Yeah, I wouldn't have said no, but the repair price wasn't exorbitant, so I'm not complaining. And it's been fairly trusty, and I've got some nice shots out of it, so I can't complain too much about it.
I think I've had my camera for probably close to coming up to 10 years now.
Yep.
I mean, some people are into gear and getting the latest thing, but I've always found that if what I've got is working and it's not limiting what I need to do, then I'm happy to keep it. So I'll probably keep this camera until it just stops working, and then I'll get a new one. But unless it's stopping me from doing what I need to do, then I don't know, maybe I'll accidentally drop it in the ocean.
Mine's about 5 or 6 years old, and I'm like you, not the sort to go out and buy the latest gear simply because it's available. I have a look and I see what they're doing, and see what each of the companies are up to and who's leapfrogging who and that sort of thing. But I don't get hung up about I've got to have the latest gear now simply because it's new. It's never been something that's really driven me, and partly it's the cost, but because it can be a very expensive hobby. I think glass is the only thing that I really sort of spend serious money on, and even then I buy a fair amount of secondhand glass as well. I bought the last 2 L series lenses for my Canon through Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace or one of those, and to be honest, with lenses, I think that's a relatively economical way of doing it. But with a body, I think I'd definitely be buying a new one. I wouldn't be going secondhand.
Yeah, I wouldn't be buying my camera secondhand off me. I know what it's been through, so I wouldn't want anyone else to buy that secondhand. I wouldn't want to. Probably wouldn't buy one secondhand. but I guess if I'm not buying everything as it comes out, then I kind of save money on not buying everything new every year. So yeah, I can afford to go out and get new stuff when I actually need it.
Yeah, definitely. So you gave us a bit of a horror story, and I told you mine. But do you have any memorable experiences that you've had whilst you've been out shooting?
I think one really memorable one is probably when I was in New Zealand. It's a sort of a well-known spot heading down to Mount Cook, and the 5K hike into Hooker Lake and the view of Mount Cook from there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was one time I stayed there, and over the weekend, I think I did about 3 or 4 trips in there, and just by myself, walking in and out, just hoping for decent conditions. And there was one time where instead of going to just the main spot of the lake, ended up heading along the top of the I think it's an offshoot walk that actually goes more towards Mount Cook, and I kind of walked along there a bit, and I just felt like I had the whole place to myself. I don't think there was many people down by the shore either, and I just spent the evening and into the night just shooting the glacier, the mountain, the stars. It ended up getting fairly cold. I probably wasn't dressed for the night, so I got a bit cold, and I think my lens started frosting up as well. And even saw a bit of the aurora australis
Nice.
in the other direction. I didn't get too many photos of it. I wasn't sort of in the best spot to get a decent composition for that. But it was just a really nice night to myself in the most amazing scenery ever. And it was pitch black when I was trying to walk back, and there was enough sort of ambient light around to even turn off the head torch when I got back to the main path and just kind of walk along in almost complete darkness, just sort of seeing the path just ahead of you so you still know where you're going, and just surrounded by mountains and stars. And it's just a really beautiful moment to experience. And it was good to sort of not worry too much about the photos I was taking and just enjoy my surroundings and where I was and what I was doing. And it was a good moment to reflect on the choices I've made in my life and what led to that point, and that decision to take photography on as a life choice. And it was a really nice time.
Yeah. Sounds absolutely brilliant.
And there's lots of memorable moments out there, but that was just, I guess, one that I had to myself, and really enjoyed it.
Have you ever hit a creative wall, and if so, how did you handle that?
I tend to hit creative walls all the time. If you start pushing yourself and just trying to force something, it tends to just, I guess, get stuck. I try and just step away from it for a little while, either try again the next day or just give it a week or so, or even just try immersing myself in different types of art or creativity, looking around at even paintings. Doesn't necessarily have to be photography or digital art, or even movies, TV shows, anything, and just sort of look at it from a creative point of view. Look at the decisions people made for compositions, or the colors that people chose, or the emotion that they're trying to convey with a scene or a particular piece. And I guess let all that develop in your own mind, and let your brain kind of work on it in its own way, and then um, something just clicks, and you just figure out a new path to take and a new way to approach something that might be completely different to what you're working on at the time, what you're trying to achieve. You might find something new, and you just, I guess, take it from there, and try a different approach.
Oh, that's cool.
How about yourself?
I can't say that I've actually hit a creative wall per se. I've had a couple of moments where, I've, been challenged with particular images that aren't working. And to be honest, what I'll do is I'll put them away and, try them again, maybe in a day, maybe in a month, maybe in a year or two, in some cases. I quite frequently, do dives back into the archives to find things that I might have missed, or find things that I didn't like the way that I processed initially, and therefore didn't share it with the world. But for me, I can't say that I've hit what I'd call a creative wall, where I've actually just sort of stood there and said, well, I don't know what to do next,
Mm.
But I mean, the closest thing I've had to that was really during lockdown, where I couldn't move more than 5 k's away, and it was okay. Well, what do I do now? And this podcast is really the thing that sprang from that need to create something. And I thought this was a sort of a way of engaging with other photographers who may or may not be out there, creating when I can't, So, I haven't really hit a wall, as I said, that I would call a real wall.
Mm.
So what? Go on.
I was just gonna, I guess, say it's never really a wall for too long. It's not something that's I guess really got me down about my creativity or anything. It's just a part of the process, and you can't be on all the time, and just have to accept that. It's going to come up every now and again. So you just don't let it get you down, because if you focus too much on the fact that you're stuck on something, then that's all you're going to focus on. So you kind of have to put it aside and work on something else. So it's just part of the process is to hit walls, and then don't just stand there staring at it. You kind of work on going around it.
Yeah, work out how you either dismantle it or go through it, or go, as you say, go around it. Yeah. Are there things, I guess, that you've taught yourself or learned about through your photography that you didn't think when you started that you would be learning?
About myself, guess that's a deep question. I've always, I guess, been quite aware of what goes on in my head, and the processes that lead from one thing to another. So photography has been something that's, I guess, just been a part of that growth, but there was no real revelations from it. It's definitely changed, I guess, who I am as a person and my identity. But it's been something that's been more organic in that process, rather than a light bulb kind of moments where I've realized something from photography. It's just been a changing process over time.
Yeah. Okay. What, I guess, is the main project that you see yourself working on now?
I guess with NFTs. They've really opened up a whole new avenue of ways to explore photography, creativity, and what is possible and what can be done in terms of a business direction. So I've had a few ideas of how I wanted to approach that. I am kind of working on something at the moment. I've kind of been going back through a lot of old photos, even before I had a digital SLR, even going back to ones of just my point and shoot camera from lots of travels over the past decade. So I've been through quite a lot of old photos looking for a certain type of image, and just trying to decide whether or how much I say about it, because there's the whole thing of wanting it to be I guess a bit of a surprise, but also trying to reveal that I have been working on something that is a bit more creative, a bit different to, probably completely different to the style that I've been producing. Sure. But it's definitely kept me busy and kept me focused on something at the moment. But it has to do with a lot of photos from travels and a bit of creativity with Photoshop as well.
Okay. Sounds intriguing. Look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Hopefully it is as intriguing as I want it to be. And I tend to rush things or push things out a bit too quick. So I'm trying to hold back and be a lot more patient with what I'm doing at the moment, and take my time and really hone it and not regret putting out anything too soon, and just getting it to a point where I'm happy with it and there's nothing else that I'd want to change. And I think I'm nearly at that point now. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Fair enough. If you weren't a photographer, what would you be?
I would probably still be doing biomedical science. I've always grown up with maths and science being a big part of my life, and I still kind of approach things from a very logical and scientific point of view. So if I wasn't doing photography, I'd still be in that field. And I worked as a biomedical scientist for 10 years, and it's super interesting. You definitely get a sense of work satisfaction with what you're doing. So if I didn't get into photography, I would have stayed with what I was doing, because that was fairly interesting and a lot of fun.
But I definitely see that as a fascinating career path, and something. I guess would you ever fall back to that if photography was no longer an option for some reason?
Unfortunately not. I don't think I could go back to a 9-to-5 kind of job. It wasn't quite 9 to 5. Sometimes it was 5 till 2, or 2 till 10 kind of thing. But once you start working for yourself and making your own decisions, as difficult as they are, for your finances and for your direction in your life, I can't imagine going back to just working a job. It's not something that I'd do. I'd figure out something. I'd find some other way of making a living. I can't see photography not being a part of my life in the near future. And whether that develops into, I guess, I get maybe the more digital side of things, that's a possibility. But if it wasn't doing or being creative and creating art and stuff, then I guess it'd be something in science.
Fair enough. What's the thing you like least about being a photographer or a creative person?
Uh, like least about it.
Yeah, it's easy to
Uh,
think about what you like about it. It's harder to talk about what you don't like.
yeah. It's it's a lot of fun just making stuff, but making stuff doesn't buy groceries.
Yeah,
Um, so you do have to get other people to believe in it as well,
yeah,
and it's hard to find that balance between, I guess, staying or trying to stay humble, or trying not to um, sound too much about yourself, but still sell yourself and
yep,
still make people want to buy your work. I've tried to do that by, I guess, just thinking if I just focus on the quality, people will see it and hopefully understand it. I tried, I guess, write something to go with it, whether it's just my own attempt at some sort of poetry or story, or um, some some sort of writing to go with it. But yeah, that side of things, the business side of things, focusing on um, pricing, focusing on um, building that, yeah, the business side of things. That is, um, it doesn't go well with a creative mindset. Um,
yeah. I
Unless you
know.
can sort of figure out a way to make that fun and creative in its own way.
I know exactly what you mean, and I mean, what you said before about um, sort of bragging about what you do without sounding like you're bragging.
Yeah.
I find that very difficult. I sort of grew up in an era where talking about yourself was well, wasn't in that sort of way about how good you are about things, that sort of thing. It wasn't. I guess completely discouraged, but it certainly wasn't something that was encouraged a lot. It was you were you were certainly put in your place if you started to espouse how fantastic you were.
Mm. Yeah, it's a I you kind of have to sort of say like, I'm an award-winning photographer, and it's like, why can't you just say you're a photographer? It's like, yeah, you kind of have to say
Yeah,
award-winning if you've won awards, just so you stand out, or you try and sell yourself a bit more. And
yep,
yeah, you have to push out those successes that you've had,
yeah,
um, without, yeah, just sort of sounding like you're trying to sound better than everyone else.
yep,
Because I guess we spend a lot of time with our peers, talking with other photographers, and they see what you do and you see what they do. And um, I I don't see myself as um, being better than them. So it's hard to
yep,
um, put myself out there and sound like I'm trying to put myself ahead of them,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
because I know that anyone who wants to buy art is going to, I guess, they're going to click with your work or they're not.
yep,
Um, and you just kind of have to get your work out in front of their eyes, and they'll like it. And if they've got no reason to not buy it, then they'll buy it.
yeah.
Um,
I know
but
what you mean.
if you're, yeah, it's hard because for some people, you can sound like you're talking about yourself too much. And to other potential buyers, you're not talking about yourself enough. And there's, yeah, lots of advice out there on what to do and what not to do. And most of the time it's conflicting. Um, so I guess it just comes back down to um, separating yourself from your brand and putting the brand out there and selling the brand rather than talking about yourself. Um, but
Yeah, and I think there's a
it's a difficult
cultural
balance.
yeah, there's a cultural element to that as well. Australian culture tends to not, it's don't get above yourself. The
Mm.
tall poppy syndrome comes into play a little bit. that I don't think tends to happen quite as much in the US in particular, which is obviously one of the largest marketplaces for art. And so, you do find a lot of Americans that are, they're prepped, they're ready, they can talk about, they've got their story nailed, they got their elevator pitch nailed and everything. A lot of Australians I've met just don't have that same sort of approach to doing things, and whether or not they miss out and whether or not the quality of their work or whatever shines through because of it. But I do think the culture that you've grown up in definitely has a part to play in how you see yourself, how you talk about yourself, and as you say, you don't necessarily think that you're better than anyone else, but in some circles you've got to kind of be out there selling yourself and saying, well, I am better than them because of X, and that can sometimes be a hard thing for people to say and do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's finding that way of saying, I'm not better than them, but I've had my own successes and I've done really well for myself. I've worked really hard on what I've done. I've had my journey, I've had my experiences, and they've led to this moment. And a lot of people have really enjoyed my work. They've got their journey, they're doing great, and that's fantastic. But this is me, and if you like it, then consider investing in my journey.
Definitely. All right. Are there any particular photographers that you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
Probably one that would come to mind would have to be Robert Downey. Probably goes more by the name of Intrepid Photos.
Mm-hmm.
I recently had the privilege of chatting with him. He came down to Melbourne and we met up for some meatballs down in the city, and I had a good chat with him, and his story and his life is just phenomenal. It's an amazing photographer, taken so many good adventure photos and travel photos, and just the life that he's lived is amazing to listen to. So I'd definitely recommend Robert, or even David Magro as well. Does some amazing astro work. He's built up an incredible name for himself. Does lots of great workshops, huge following on Facebook as well, and really great guy too. So I guess there's plenty of great photographers out there, but there's probably a couple that I'd recommend.
Yeah, appreciate that. I've got a very long list and working my way through it.
I can imagine, yeah.
But that's the joy of doing this, is that there's a lot of people out there that I can talk to, and some of them agree, some of them don't agree to come on the podcast. Some people don't want to talk about their work. I was actually talking to one particular photographer who won an award recently, and he said he was quite a shy and retiring person and didn't really want to do it. So, that's fine, and I respect that. Some people don't want to share what their story is, or in some cases it might be that English is their second language, so they don't want to take part. But I'm always open to talking to pretty much anyone, as you probably tell.
I'd probably fall into the category of not wanting to talk about myself as much, but I think when I started my podcast, it was definitely one of the scarier things to do, but I pushed myself to talk more and be comfortable with talking and being recorded. So I've been through all those emotions before. So coming on and talking on a podcast is not too difficult for me now, but definitely before all that, I may have declined at that point, just because I wouldn't have wanted to.
understand it and understand that people, might be shy and retiring. But I don't bite, and it's really just a conversation between me and the guest. So it's just you and me talking. Nobody else will hear it.
No, this has been great. It's been a great conversation, and you do really well to make your guests feel comfortable and talk and expose themselves a bit. It's been a great experience.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And very happy to be on that. Very happy to be on the podcast, considering you've got such a long list of great photographers. I know that would be out there and would probably be quite happy to be on the podcast. So looking forward to seeing who's up next.
I've got one final question for you, and it's definitely the most important one. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I would, if I had the choice between pineapple on a pizza of a Hawaiian or a margarita, I'd go with the pineapple.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pizza. I'm happy to eat pizza, and the more stuff that's on it, the more stuff that's on there, probably the better.
I was talking to Julian Lalo last week. He's an Italian, so he was a definite no. So
I've had the pizza that's called the Aussie with the egg and bacon on it.
Yep.
I think I've seen on the internet someone put strawberries on a pizza, like a savory pizza.
Wow.
I think that's where I'd probably draw the line.
Yeah,
pineapple I can deal with. Pineapple and ham go well together, but probably there's some things that I wouldn't. But I've grown up with pineapple on a pizza, so that's fine. It's not my go-to, but I'll eat it if it's the only choice.
Well, as I say, it's an important issue that we need to get to the bottom of, I think.
Yes, definitely. I think it's it needs discussing more.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with me, Kieran. I've really enjoyed catching up with you, and it's really interesting to hear about how you have sort of dealt with the last few years and what you've done. Where can people find your work?
So you can find my work at kieranstone.com. I spend most of my time on Twitter at the moment, at Kieran Stone AU. Instagram is, I guess, more of a portfolio at the moment, which is also Kieran Stone AU. Or if you're on one blockchain social media, then you can find me on Hive as well, just under Kieran Stone. They're probably the best places to find me.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Matt.
Thank you very much, Grant.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnephotography.com. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Grant Swinburne, and I hope to see you out shooting soon.